So let's kick off. We've got quite a lot to get through today. I think this is going to be a lot of fun and a very interesting topic. And our topic today is conscious leadership is about asking the right questions. So conscious leadership is all about asking the right questions. So that's where we're going with what we're going to be doing today. So, but before we get into that, I just want to say we've a little bit of a reminder that we will have an additional Q&A session right at the end. So we'll be available for a good 10-15 minutes afterwards. But for those of you who can only do the half hour, not a problem at all. We will definitely finish with the content by past, but the Q&A, we will do some more of that for anybody who has additional questions at the end. Now, so what are we talking about today? What is this all about? So I'm kind of wondering if I shouldn't maybe go and spotlight for everybody so you can see more clearly what I'm doing. By the way, if you do want to see other people, you can shift the slider or whatever, but I'm going to do it like this for now. And we're going to jump in with this first question, which is, what is the value of asking over telling? What is the value of asking over telling? And this is a really interesting question. I do a lot of work with this with very senior leaders in the corporate space. And a lot of them assume, and I don't know if it's specifically an African culture thing, but a lot of them assume that if they are asking, they're no longer leading. If they're telling, they're leading. And I'm going to take you through a bit of a journey with that today. And I want to start off with this, that our job as leaders is not to think for our people. Our job as leaders is not to play the expert, to be the know-it-all. Our job of leaders is not to shut down the conversations or thinking. And often the telling approach will do that, where we're thinking for our people and then we tell them. We're playing the expert, we're being the know-it-all, we're telling them. We're shutting down the conversations. And one of my favorite examples is I've got a friend who actually coaches teenagers on their purpose. And what he's discovered over time is that whenever he plays the expert, whenever he comes along with his telling approach, he suddenly finds the conversation ends, and then they kind of go, there was no connection with this guy. But if he asks tons of questions, they feel really heard, they feel engaged, and they feel like their thinking is opened up. And so as we are asking, so what is the value of asking over telling, we're realizing immediately that there's some interesting things. So let's talk about this from a conscious leadership perspective. What is great conscious leadership? Well, one of the things is stimulating new perspectives. And that is our theme for this month, is the leader as the stimulator of new perspectives. And so that's what, and you can't do that just by telling all the time. But you can do it by asking brilliant questions. So we want to be asking insightful questions. That's what great conscious leadership is about. We want to be empowering great thinking in our people. That's what conscious leadership is about. And ultimately, we want to be growing competent self-reliance. We want to be getting our people to a place where you're no longer the bottleneck as the leader. You are actually the one who is able to build them to a place where they can actually function more and more without you in a space of competence, motivation, and confidence. And we want to get there by asking a lot of great questions. And so my sort of fundamental question is conscious leadership about asking or telling. And so we're going to jump straight into a poll. And I'm going to share screens quickly to show you our AHA slides. And so we got 3 different AHA slides, things we're going to be doing today. And I'm going to present the first one and get you up and running. And so you can either scan this QR code, or Cindy will put into the chat the link for this, which is ahaslides.com, MIU. By the way, if you just type ahaslides.com into a browser, right at the and go in right at the top of the AHA Slides page, it'll ask you, are you participating as a participant? What is the code? And the code is MIU. So that is another way to do this. So Yeah, welcome everybody who's just arrived. But let's get on to AHA slides. Let's get on to having a look. So, those of you who've got this already, ahaslides.com, MIU, here is my question for you, which is, how much of the time when you're speaking with your people are you telling versus asking? So it's a sliding scale. Now, I haven't included listening. I'm talking about the bit where your voice is being heard. What percentage of the time that your voice is being heard is telling? What percentage of the time when your voice is being heard is asking? So we're getting a few people in. We're seeing this sort of curve is developing here. We've got a 6.7 average now. So telling versus asking, a little bit higher on the telling side again. So we're seeing it's giving us a cumulative curve over here with an average now of 5.6. And this could be with your children, this could be with your team, this could be with a variety of scenarios. Okay, yeah, we're getting 5.5 now. Very interesting. Let's have a look, see. So ahaslides.com/MIU if you've just arrived, and you will find the curve. Oh, it's changing shape again. Isn't this interesting? Telling versus asking. So we've clearly got a couple of people on the fours and a couple of people on well, about 3 people on the fours, I think, and a few people on the sixes and the sevens and a 5 as well. All right, so thank you very much for that. Interesting, very, very interesting. Slightly leaning towards the telling in terms of the peaks, but the asking in terms of the average. So very, very interesting. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to move on to the rest of what we're going to be talking about. So great to Frank, good to see you. Frank is an old boss of mine of 25 years ago, I think, something like that, maybe even longer. Lovely to have you along, Frank. All right, so let's have a quick look at what we're going to do next, and that is this: the why of this. Why does it matter? Why does whether we're asking questions or telling matter? And it's actually, I've got a very simple answer for you. Telling too much will create dependency. Asking the right questions will create self-reliance. And so why does that matter? Well, as leaders, you can't take vacations if everybody's dependent on you. In fact, all of their work is going to be held up every time you're in a meeting and they need another answer or another question answered or another piece of direction. And so telling creates dependency. Asking the right questions will create self-reliance. And so that's what we are looking for here. We are looking for that place of not creating dependency, but creating self-reliance. So that's why it matters. And in the longer term, that's what we want to do. There are some shorter term exceptions, but I'll deal with those a little bit later. So let's go on to the next one, is that who needs this? And, the obvious question is you need this as leaders, but actually your people need this even more. Your people need it for the simple reason, and I've got this silly thing enabled that if I raise my hand, it puts my hand as raised in Zoom. I need to change that setting because I can't speak without raising my hands. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about who needs this. Well, your people need this. The reason that your people need this is that conscious leaders develop their people. It's for their growth. So our people are not going to grow if we're just giving them the answers. They'll grow to a point, but they won't grow beyond that point if we're providing all the answers all the time. They also, if we want them to feel valued. If we are simply telling all the time, then they kind of going there thinking, I thought you hired me for my brain or my education or whatever, but it seems like you just hired me to execute whatever you're thinking. So they're not going to feel valued if they are only being told and they're never being asked, they're never being drawn out, we're only putting in. And in terms of empowerment, people do not feel empowered. In fact, one of the great bits of research around motivation that's been repeated every decade for, I think, the last 70 years is that one of the top motivators is a sense of being part of things, a sense that your voice is heard, a sense that you are valued for what you are bringing. And so that's a really big one. So your people need it for their growth, for being valued and being empowered. But you need it too. As leaders, you desperately need to be asking more questions than just telling. Why? Well, number one, I've already mentioned this, you're going to free up time and be less of a bottleneck in your organizations. But here's a second one, and many leaders, as I've been working with leaders around the world, they really open their eyes at this one. And that is that they get stuck in a thinking where everything is operational and they have no time to be strategic. So I'll give you a simple example. They're involved in everybody's day-to-day work, and everything is about delivery now, but nobody is zooming out to sharpen the saw. Everything is about saw harder. Nobody is trying to sharpen the saw. Everything is about firefighting. Nobody is trying to do any fire prevention. And so one of the keys is that as we ask more and more healthy questions, we end up being more strategic in our thinking, and that then enables us to do less firefighting and more fire prevention. And I'll give you a very specific example. I've got a friend who's recently become the academic dean of a small IT university, and he's realized that there's some things where his people are stuck, and he started to ask them questions about what will this look like next time we have exams? Because they've got, every quarter they've got exams. And what would this look like at the end of the quarter's exams? What would it look like after the end of the next quarter? And they're starting to see the bigger picture that nothing's going to change if their thinking doesn't change. And so it gets out of that operational mode into a more strategic mode. And of course, the final reason that you need this as a conscious leader is you'll be able to take vacations. Because if you're the one who's providing all the answers, you'll never be able to take vacations. And so that becomes a really critical element as well. Very good. So I think it's time to go through a little bit of the prioritization of this. So when should we do what in terms of what is the schedule? When do we tell? When do we ask? What's that thing? So I'm going to take you through a couple of tips. The first one is that we should be telling when our people are learning something new. If it's not us telling, they're getting somebody else to tell. Maybe it's a training, maybe it's a video, whatever it is. But the telling part does play a role when somebody is starting something new and they don't know. So when they really, really don't know, then telling could be absolutely valid. When they need clarity on the direction and why it matters. This is where we're going. This is the new direction. This is why it matters. This is why it's important. That kind of thing is a great place to tell. And another time that's good to be telling is when they're stuck. If they are stuck and they can't move forward, they might need to be told something. They might be missing some kind of information. But I'm now going to go on to the asking. And I'm smiling here for a very simple reason, is the first point of asking, when should we be asking, is when they are stuck. So when people are stuck, we should be both telling and asking. The stuck thing is not only for telling. We should be asking, what's getting in the way? What could we do about that? We could be asking some brilliant open-ended questions that can also help get them unlocked. So telling could be when they're stuck. Asking should also be when they are stuck. Another time when we should be asking more questions is when they're starting to get it. When they're starting to make the progress, they're starting to get it, they're realizing they have enough of a foundation. If we carry on telling at that point, they could feel restricted. But if we start asking them, so what do you think you should do here? What are your other options? How else could we approach this? That then opens up the thinking even further to accelerate the further growth. Another time that we should be asking is whenever we are wanting to grow their confidence. So let's say they are lacking a bit of confidence. They're starting to get skilled on a particular task and their confidence is a little bit low. We want to up that confidence by asking some good questions where they suddenly realize, oh, but they do know. They know more than they think they do. Same with motivation, that they may want to be able to through asking questions, you could say, so how do you think that looks from the perspective of your teammates? You go, oh wow, yeah, I don't want to let the teammates down. So asking great questions can increase motivation as well. And of course, finally, when they're getting ready for release. Now, we talked about release, I think, in March this year, but the whole idea of the ultimate goal of conscious leadership is for our people to be released into functioning in a self-directed way. And so there's the when. Now, let's have a look at another poll. So if you can go back to AHA slides, and it's the MIU, the Morpheus Intelligence Update. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share again, I'm going to share the screen again, and I'm going to take you to the next slide. And the next slide is, what do you want to do differently based on what we've talked about so far? What do you want to do differently based on what we've talked about? So I've changed to that slide, and if you're on your phone, it might tell you at the top, switch the presenter, switch slides. You may need to just click on that. But what do you want to do differently based on what you've heard so far today? Ask more questions, ask better questions, empower my people more. And by the way, if you see anything on here that you like, you can type it in again on your device and it will make that bit bigger. So we build a word cloud where the biggest items are the ones that multiple people have entered. So ahaslides.com/MIU, encouraging curiosity, tell only when in need. Nice one. Okay, very good. Anybody else? Let's keep adding ideas in on what do you want to do differently as on the basis of what we've said so far. Oh, empower my people more is increased. Okay, ask better questions as well, and asking more questions. Formulate questions better. Okay, good. Very good. By the way, don't worry about spelling mistakes. They're irrelevant. There's no spell checker on this. Okay, what else have we got here that's come up? Empower my people again. Acknowledge if they get it. Nice one. I really like that. That's an excellent one as well. Okay, better questions. Empower my people more. This is a very interesting thing. Okay. Oh, it's changed to a nice layout there. Okay, so better questions, empowerment, more questions. Very good. Thank you, everybody, for your participation in this. This we will include in the follow-up email that'll have the notes from today with a link for watching the recording if you want to see that. All right. Wow. Okay. Oh, encourage critical thinking. That's a new one that's popped in. Encourage self-reliance is also good. Offer autonomy. Very nice. Okay. Acknowledge. Excellent. Okay. I'm going to move off this. If you're still typing in, it will appear on the final thing that we're going to do. So thank you very much for all of that. Very good. Very good. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So where are we going next? Well, the final and critical thing is how. How do we do this well? How do we actually have this be brilliant at asking these kinds of questions? So let me take you through a few elements. How do we get this right? How do we get this right? And I want to start with this. Make most of your questions open-ended. Make most of them open-ended. What we really want is a lot of what questions, and I think I've tried to talk about that a little bit already, maybe followed by how questions. What? Probably you want about 80% of your questions to be what or how. You can also have other open-ended questions like where or who or when or those kinds of things. But the critical ones for me are the what and the how. So that's my first tip, is make most of your questions open-ended. The next one is limit closed questions, but you can use them maybe about 10% of the time. It almost helps bring a conclusion. So let's say you've got an open-ended discussion and all the ideas have been brainstormed, and then you could say, okay, tell me what you're going to go and do now. And now they're going to give you a finite answer. Or can you? And they're going to give you a finite answer. Did you? And you're going to get a finite answer. Or by when? And you're going to get a finite answer. So you can have closed questions, but closed questions more bring it to a close rather than the open questions which open up the thinking. And so we want to limit the closed questions and make the majority, probably 90% of our questions, to be open-ended questions. Now I'm getting to the one that's going to shock you, which is avoid why questions. Avoid why questions. Now, a lot of people are really shocked at that. What is the problem with a why question? And the problem is this, especially for us as leaders, people see our position and they find a why question can be quite intimidating. So let me give you some examples. So why didn't you do that? It sounds like suddenly I'm standing in front of my dad and I'm a 6-year-old and I didn't, brush my teeth or something. It kind of brings a different kind of a mindset up with it. And it can raise defensiveness, especially if something has gone wrong. Now, of course, when we're trying to get to the root cause of a technical problem, we've got to ask why questions. But in terms of getting our people's thinking opening up, why questions close down, they raise defensiveness, and people feel like, oh, I've got to be careful here, I'm in trouble, that kind of thing. So we want to get away from the why questions when we are doing our one-on-ones with our people. Another problem with the why questions is they look backwards rather than move forward. So rather than saying, why didn't you get this done, is what's getting in the way of you getting this done? It makes it a more forward-looking question. What can you do to overcome that obstacle is a much more forward-looking question than why didn't you do it? And you can be rephrasing a lot of why questions as what questions to help with that forward momentum. And I'm going to give you a final reason, and I think you might find this quite amusing, is we so often call the why question the therapy question. So why didn't you get this done? Oh, well, the way my parents raised me and the way I was potty trained and you're going back into therapy now, as opposed to asking a what question, which is, okay, what can I do about this? Who can I enlist to get help? You can ask some different kinds of questions. How can you overcome that? Very different, forward-looking rather than kind of, and really, us as conscious leaders, we should not be pretending to be therapists. It's really not what we're here for. Now, next one. We want to use questions to stimulate thinking and shifting perspectives, and that's really what this session is all about. So, for example, somebody comes in and says, oh, I just can't do this or whatever, and you say, so what's important about that for you? Now they're going, okay, because they've come in with maybe an assumption, and now you ask that question, tell me more about what's important about that, and now they've got to think about, so why is that important to them? And it brings things to the consciousness that were maybe more of a conditioning or a belief or something like that, or just a mindset even. Another good one to stimulate thinking and shifting perspectives is, how might that look from somebody else's perspective? So you say, I can't do that, I can only do it this way. You say, how do you think that looks from the customer's perspective? Or how do you think that looks from the executive's perspective? Or how do you think that looks from your children's perspective? How does that look from your teammates' perspective? And just getting that shifting of perspective by asking a great how question there. Another one is, how else could we interpret that situation? Where we're asking great questions to go, okay, so yeah, that's one possible interpretation. What other interpretations could there be? And I don't know about you, but I come across this one all the time, where I have made an assumption that this person and what they have done is, they were just out to get me or whatever. And you kind of go, well, how else could you interpret that? Well, maybe they had a fight with somebody before they came and saw me, or, maybe there's something else going on. And I think that's another way to open up thinking and to shift perspectives. And then, of course, another one is, what assumptions are at play here? So, when we come up with things, we say this, and this. I said, what assumptions is that based on? And then we've got to go and think back and go, okay, well, we're assuming this and we're assuming this. Okay, what else could be happening there? So, yeah, the point of this is to stimulate thinking and shift perspectives. So I'm going to give 3 final tips before we wrap the session up. And I know I've gone through this very quickly, but it will be in the PDF that we're going to send you. And the final tips are this: keep your questions short and simple. So, one of the big problems I find is when somebody asks me a paragraph of a question, I will get lost somewhere between the first and second sentence and then not understand what the question is. So, you want to keep very short and simple. I mean, even something like, what else? Or, and, these can be very, very stimulating in terms of their thinking. And so, if you do have a long question to ask, the way to do it is this: I have a question I'd like to ask you, but I need to give you context. You then give context. Do we understand? Yes, we understand. Okay, so here's my question. Short and simple. So, yeah, avoid long questions. People will get lost and you will get the wrong answer or the wrong action from them. So another one is ask one question at a time. I love this one because I often want to jump ahead. So you ask a question, they're still busy answering it, and you're asking another one and another one. Much better to ask the question and then get from that, or once they've answered that question, you can even go, if you think that there's a deeper thing, you go, what else? And let them finish that processing that stimulates their thinking and their perspectives, and then only go to the next question. So yeah, don't do a barrage of questions one upon the other, one question at a time. And then the final tip is focus on moving forward. Focus on moving forward. We want to take our people forward. We don't want to get them into analysis paralysis. We want to continually get them to move forward in their thinking and forward in their actions. And so that's the final tip, is focus on moving forward. So what is this overall challenge that we are facing over here, that we are looking at with this idea of questions versus answers? And it's this: to move the leadership mindset that we have from it's our job to put in to it's our job to draw out. And to me, of course, there's got to be some putting in. But our research is showing that probably never more than 1/3 of the time should we be putting in. Probably 2/3 of the time, maybe even 3/4 of the time, we should be focusing on drawing out from our people, not putting in. And I think that's probably the kind of ratio that is going to serve us the best. Now, I'm very aware that I'm running out of time, but we are getting there very, very nicely. So let me just a couple of things, and then I'm going to wrap up. The first thing is just to let you know about next month. The July one is going to be all about shifting mindsets. What are you doing to shifting mindsets? What are you doing to shift the mindsets of your people? And so we're calling it's the challenging mindset time. So it's just to see the pattern. What we did last month, we focused, thank you very much, Cindy, for the time there. Last month, we focused on connect. We want to connect with our people. This month, it's how do we stimulate their thinking. Now, when we've done that, how do we challenge them to go a level higher, a level further, and challenge them to change their mindsets. So that is where we're going to be going next month. Then one more little thing before we go, and that is our egg. Now, some of you will have seen this already, but what is your leadership egg, your leadership essence growth gap? And I'm going to just show you a very short little video on this. Okay, so that is a little video on our leadership egg. If you go back to your AHA slides and go to the next slide, I'm going to change slides there. There is actually a thing which says, what is your leadership egg? And if you click on the egg that's there, it will take you to the assessment and you can do it afterwards. So it's a 5-minute assessment, won't take you long at all. So what is your leadership egg, your essence growth gap? Click on that egg on AHA slides, or Cindy can put it into the chat, I think, of how you can connect to it. So Cindy, I'm sure we'll do that in a moment. And thank you very much for that. Okay, then I am at half past. So what am I going to do now? I am going to switch back to the presentation. Okay, so Q&A time. Thank you very much, all of those of you who've attended. If you need to leave now, you you can feel free to do so. And but let's have some questions. Let's get some conversation going. Cindy, have we got any questions yet that I need to be looking